Pass Around the Smile is like your go-to friend, the one that lifts you up and backs you till the end. She's there to guide and inspire, challenge and teach, and remind you that your best self isn't out of reach. Self-development, manifestation, self-love and more, it's time to trust the process more than ever before. Welcome to Pass Around the Smile, the podcast. I'm your host, Cleo Massey, and I am so glad you're here. Let the magic begin. I'm so excited to introduce you to the wonderful Briony Benjamin. To be honest, I actually really struggled writing this intro because how do you articulate in a few sentences someone so amazing, inspiring, strong, and clever? I will give it a go. Briony is a storyteller, content creator, and speaker who has lived her fair share of ups and downs. After beginning her career by completing a commerce finance degree, she quickly ditched the numbers and studied film instead. She then began putting her love, time, and energy into making entertaining content for change-making organisations like World Wildlife Fund and Get Up. She was then quickly snatched up by Mammamia as the executive producer for video. While Briony was living her best and most busy life, it was rudely interrupted by the dreaded C word, cancer. Throughout her journey fighting cancer, she documented it and created a short video, You Only Get One Life, which quickly went viral and led to a publishing deal. Her book, Life is Tough But So Are You, is absolutely incredible. It was created to help people who have had a massive setback. And this book is also extremely insightful in being able to support those around you who are going through a tough time. Briony is a shining light and spends her time inspiring audiences through her words and content. I am so honoured to have her on, so let's get into the conversation. Hi, Briony.
Hi, Cleo. Thanks for having
Oh
me here.
God.
So nice to meet you in person.
I know. I feel like I know you
Yeah,
quite well.
I feel a bit the same.
Yeah, it's so nice. Spiritual connection.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you so much. And I have introed you already. So, I mean, my listeners will already know about your book. But I do just want to start by talking about your book and how absolutely incredible it is.
Oh, thank you.
I've just finished reading it. And I personally, thankfully at the moment, I am not going through a hard time. But your book was so insightful for me to be able to be a good support in a different way that I have never kind of learnt about to those around me going through a hard time. And of course, then your book is perfect for people going through a hard time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just incredible. And I guess I was hoping with this episode to kind of go through your life journey and then we'll kind of pull bits from the book as we go, because there are so many elements I want to talk about. Like, I loved so much of it. So yeah, how does that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, looking forward to chatting about all the things.
Yeah. Well, I thought, if it's okay with you, we might start off with kind of that time where you were living in Sydney. You were executive producer for video at Mammamia. You were living your busiest, most successful city girl corporate life.
Yeah.
How was that? Like, talk us through that.
Yeah, look, it was great fun. I mean, working at Mammamia it was just a heap of fun. It was, there were about, in the Sydney office, 80 women, all fabulous. I was really shocked actually before I started working there. The comments, people would say, oh gosh, working in an all-female environment, like, oh God, is it going to be like a pack of, nasty kind of biatches? Which was really surprising that was people's just initial response to a big group of women working together. But my experience couldn't have been more different. It was just full of seriously fun, very clever, switched on women. We'd start every day with a stand-up. So people from all around the company, you'd literally stand up in a circle, pitch ideas through. It was hilarious, like the conversations that were going on. And so the video team that I headed up would all be part of that conversation. And just the ability to spark different creative ideas every day, but be drawing in from all these really clever news brains that are across world events and current affairs. And just riffing ideas each day. It just was like a creative brain gym, Yeah. And so, to be in that position where you could just have an idea and as a team sit down and work out how to make it that week. And we made some seriously funny, ridiculous videos, that went really viral out there in the world. And yeah, it was great fun. Having said that, throughout that whole, I suppose, year, my first year at Mammamia, I just had this tired, exhausted, icky feeling all of the time. And, monthly we would do this shoot that was a very high octane, high energy video that I would be in.
Right.
It was like a with and without. So it was like with heels, with sneakers.
I've seen the video.
You know,
so good.
Very, very serious, important content, but the audience loved it. And I remember always just feeling really sick after one of those shoots. And this went on for months and months and months. And so, yeah, over that period, I kept going back to my GP, asking, you know, is there something up? Is there something up? And I kept getting told, you know, it basically kept getting put down to stress. And,
Right.
but I didn't feel that stressed. I thought, this is the least stressful job I've had probably in my adult career.
You're having fun.
This is great.
Yeah.
You know, and because it was full of women and a lot of them were mums, like they were out the door at 5. There wasn't an expectation to be responding late in the night to emails. It was a really great work environment. And so it didn't really add up. But I suppose at that time I didn't yet know how to listen to my body and trust my instincts. Because if someone's telling you you're fine, well, suck it up and get on with it.
And if it's a doctor, like a position of power, you're like, yep, whatever you say.
Yeah. And there was no obvious things that we could point it to from the tests that we were doing. So I thought, okay. You know, and then of course they start to ask, well, you know, is it maybe you're depressed? Maybe, you know, like, is it a mental health issue? And I kind of deep down just knew it wasn't. I knew that wasn't really, I felt exhausted and I wasn't looking forward to much because I remember getting an invite for a girlfriend's wedding, like a really good friend. And that should be a joy-filled, exciting thing, right? And I remember my first thought being, oh, you know, this is going to take so much energy.
Wow.
Which is a sure sign that something's not right.
Yeah, gosh. And then I guess you were kind of then led to the doctor for the results on a random Thursday morning.
Yeah, exactly. So it was actually my mum she was just on my case. She's going, you know, you're having night sweats. You're not yourself. You're just exhausted all the time, you know. And I think, gosh, mother's intuition, they just know, don't they? And my dad's a vet, so she kept prodding my dad going, Anthony, you know, what could it be? What could it be?
Yeah.
And he sort of had to think about it and they sort of surmised that maybe I had lymphoma.
Right,
because
so they actually...
from the night sweats, you know, like night sweats is, I now realise, a red flag. We call it a red flag in the medical, you know, community, that it's, you can be cancer. So I was being told it could be hormonal, but, you know, I was 31. It wasn't like I was going through menopause or any big changes. Yeah. And certainly I don't want to alarm anyone listening because sometimes night sweats can just be a hormonal change. But for me, it was over a 12-month period, on and off. And by the end, I was having them night after night after night. Right. I was waking up, you know, dripping, having to change my pajamas, change my sheets. And yet I realised when I went back to the doctor, she had never really interrogated that much, you know, because my dad ended up actually calling her up and saying, you know, she's having really bad night sweats. She said, oh, they're not that severe, are they? My dad sort of said, you know, well, have you actually asked? You know, so I think that's a really good thing to look for in a GP. Someone who's actually just goes that bit deeper, asks for that history, is really on the case, you know, because I think I say now GPs are they're used to seeing the worried well, people who are well but are worried that they're not. Yeah. So And for me, I presented well. I looked well, like I was bubbly. Even when I was exhausted, I was bubbly. Yeah. And so I think that they just have this health bias against, sort of against young people too. You don't jump to the worst case scenario, even if there's been a year of sort of unexplained issues going on. So basically I went at my parents' insistence to go and see a specialist, hematologist, which is a blood specialist. Right. And she was the first person I realised that actually took my pain seriously. I said, look, I'm waking up every night, I'm in sweats, I'm aching. And I remember her just looking at me and saying, oh, so this is actually having a really big impact on your life. And I went, oh, sort of like this relief, like, oh, someone understands. Listening. Yeah, that this is actually, this isn't normal to be feeling like this. She sent me off for some tests and said, basically, come back in a fortnight and we'll give you the results. And my mum, bless her, flew down from Queensland to be with me. And I was like, Mum, I've got a really big day. We're interviewing Sophie Monk,
I'm busy. I'm
really busy and important. And literally that's where my head was that morning, racing into the hospital thinking, oh, another dead end, like blah, blah, blah. And then I'll get into work. How hard, how busy is the traffic going to be? And I sat down in that appointment and the specialist, who was the most beautiful woman and so gentle and kind, and she just said, So the results are back, and I'm really sorry, but it is lymphoma, like your parents were worried about it. It's a blood cancer. And so what that means is we just need to clear the next 6 months immediately. And it's just like the biggest, the most surreal moment of your life. Because you just, cancer is something that happens to other people, right? You never think it's going to happen to you, especially when you're 31 and it feels like life's just sort of beginning and taking off. It was just a huge, huge shock. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And so in the kind of initial stages of that shock and overwhelm, what helped you?
Yeah, so having mum there
Yeah.
for starters.
Oh my God, thank God she came
down. She just grabbed my hand. I remember we just looked at each other. Eyes sort of welling up, but she was so strong the whole way through. Never saw her cry. And the specialist gave me some really great advice then and there, and it's something I just come back to all the time. She just said, I don't want you to Google it. I don't want you to think too far ahead. We're not going to talk about treatment today. We're just going to focus on the next 3 steps. So that, I think, is just great life advice. When
Next
anything is feeling overwhelming. And sometimes I say, break it down even further. Just say, okay, what's one thing I can do right now to make this better?
Yes.
And it's not going to solve it. It's not going to take my cancer away.
Yeah.
But it will at least give me a manageable step to focus on.
Yeah.
And take the overwhelm away, because, it's incredibly overwhelming. There's nothing more overwhelming than, and not just health issues, but like a huge curveball being thrown at you like that. And so I think that's good. Yeah, just the next step. And a beautiful girlfriend who's an illustrator, she lives in Amsterdam, she said to me some great words that stuck with me in that first week. And she just said, some things don't have to be understood, just accepted.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
It is, because, and she could give that advice because she'd been herself through a major sort of mental health breakdown some years before. You've got to be very careful giving advice. And I write in the book about just don't give advice. But I think when it's a trusted friend like that, and I was going to her going, this is what's happened.
Yeah.
And I think a nice way sometimes is to say, can I offer up an idea?
Yeah, and then you kind of give
say,
permission
actually,
or not.
no, I don't want, I just don't want to, I don't need advice right now, or I don't. But that was a really helpful thing, because you can just waste so much energy. I could have wasted so much energy in that first week. How did the doctor miss this? Why me? How long has this been going on for? What caused this? But you're never going to get answers to any of those questions.
No, and it's not going to make you feel any better.
No, and also what I've since learned is those kind of thought patterns, all they really do is they release cortisol and adrenal into your body, which just physically exhaust you.
Yeah.
But keep your body in this kind of fear, kind of alert, fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And when your body's, you're dousing your own body basically in this cocktail of hormones and chemicals.
Yeah.
When you're in that state, sleep is harder, your immune system can't function, all these things, there's all these flow-on effects. So it was a really calming idea. I think that idea of just, okay. And you can use it in so many scenarios in life. Even when someone's really disappointed you or let you down, or be it something big or something quite small, you do, okay, I don't need to understand this actually. I'm just going to accept it.
And you're so good at that, just as you're speaking now, and I know you do lots of speaking engagements as well, but also in your book, you're talking about your cancer journey, but also relating your journey to what other people might be going through relative to them.
Well,
so it can be like relationship breakdowns, friendship, marriage, whatever, or like a sickness of another kind, a loss of a job, anxiety, depression. So you do so well at like taking the advice that you learned over such a hard journey and being like, you can use this too.
Well, yeah, because I think so many of these scenarios, it's a similar process, right?
Yeah.
If it's a relationship breakdown, or, you've lost your job, like you said, or you're just really struggling with depression, anxiety, like that acceptance piece is really helpful no matter what's going on. Like grief, you lost someone that you adore, so much energy can be wasted. Oh, what if? it's not going to change the reality. So I think, the acceptance and we're just breaking it down like that can apply to any situation.
It's such good advice. And then you have a really good quote and kind of idea around worrying.
Yes.
That I love. Tell us about it.
Yeah, look, a friend sent this to me at some point during treatment, and it just said, worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it gets you nowhere. And it's just so true. It's back to that energy conservation thing, you know. And we had a beautiful family friend, and he actually passed away from lymphoma about 10 years ago. But he was just so positive and sunny till the end. And he said, look, my theory is if you worry and then you find out there wasn't a reason to worry, then you've just wasted all this energy. And if you worry and then you find out there was a reason, you know, like actually that was a valid worry, but you've then done double the worrying. So
I love that so
all
much.
you can do is just, I'm just going to take it bit by bit, you know? And I had to apply this actually 2 weeks ago. Take my own medicine. It's when you've written about it and you talk about it, you're like, oh, I got to do it. Now I've got to do it myself. But I actually, like, a lump came up on my breast. And so I literally had to go back to the place where I was first scanned, and I thought, oh my goodness, how is this happening? Because I'm currently 6 months pregnant at the time, and my GP, you know, because I said, I'm sure it'll be fine though, and she sort of went, you know, oh gosh. But I had to just apply this. Okay, well, like, what is the point of me crying and being distraught for the next week until I get the results back? Nothing. I'm just going to take all the joy out of this week. Yeah. And so I did. I just kept going, okay, I'm just going to wait. We'll wait until the results are there, and then we'll think about it, you know. And luckily it was fine.
Yay! Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, spoiler.
That's amazing.
And it's just, you know, a change that's happening on my breast from,
And my listeners can't see you right now, but you've got a beautiful baby bump.
I do.
It's just, oh, God, it's so exciting. You've got such a beautiful journey ahead of you.
Yeah, a beautiful and interesting and
overwhelming.
All the things,
yeah, of course. Yeah. And so, God, that worrying thing, just back to the worrying, it reminds me of that quote that's, worrying doesn't take away tomorrow's troubles, it takes away today's peace. And I like how you said that you just had to keep, like, even, you know, a couple of weeks ago when you found that lump, you had to keep reminding yourself of it because sometimes it can be easier said than done.
Well, totally.
You know.
And it's not like I'm now the expert in all of these things, right? Because I've been through it and done it. Like I actually find I pick up the book from time to time, read it and go, oh yeah, gosh, totally forgot about that. Yeah. Oh, rest. Oh yeah. You know, I'm not actually doing that. So in a selfish way, I feel like I kind of wrote the book as a guide to just keep myself on track, you know?
Yeah.
But it's constant repetition. And so I think that's also the thing of being kind to yourself. If you do fall off the wagon or you do forget some of these things, it's just constant reinforcement and doing it and, you know, always trying to get better.
Yeah,
be better.
And it's okay. Like, we've got to stop being so hard on ourselves because I think we all know that kind of experiment, and they do it with flowers or trees or water or whatever.
Yes.
It's like when you talk kindly, it literally grows.
Yes.
And when you don't, it can die. Like, it's awful. So we have to, like, protect our energy.
And you'd never speak to, you know, a best friend like that.
No.
Like, imagine. So I think for most of us, if we spoke to the way we speak to ourselves, if we spoke to a friend like that, you would have no friends.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And isn't that sad?
Yeah.
When I'm getting in a little rut of just speaking to myself unkindly and being hard on myself, I will always do an inner child meditation.
Oh, beautiful.
And just, you know, go back to that little girl in me and look at me when I'm like 10 years old. And then immediately I cannot say anything mean to her. I'm like, what am I doing? It's the same person. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Gorgeous. Yeah.
So you've just been given the news and you've, you know, got this beautiful advice from your doctor to kind of, you know, just a step at a time.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah. Well, it was, I mean, initially I remember just writing out a list of my most favourite people on the planet who I wanted to let know before, you know, they just heard on the grapevine because and so as the person going through it, you're sort of thinking, how do I gently give this information, you know, to the people that love me, starting with my sisters who were both, one was overseas, one was far away. And, so that, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's certainly a good way to crystallize who matters and what matters very quickly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then I think, you know, Mum and I from that first night, we just sort of thought, okay, well, here we are. I'm accepting that this is happening. I'm not going to try and understand it. I've accepted it. Now, if we've got to do it anyway, let's just see how lightly we can kind of go through this, you know, because I think it's in any of these scenarios, it's easy to be swallowed into the void a bit. And so trying to strike that balance when you're going through a crisis of any sort, not suppressing how you feel, because that was a big learning for me early on. I think I've always been naturally a positive, optimistic person, and I just thought initially I could just fight this with, you know, be Captain Positivity and just, you know, get an A+ in Cancer, and I was just going to smash this. And that was going fine for me until, you know, 3 weeks into chemo, my hair started falling out, and it's just really difficult and tough. And I think trying to pretend it's not is just not helpful.
No,
and
do more harm than good, really. It's like steps into that toxic positivity realm.
Completely.
Yeah.
And so I was definitely doing a bit of the toxic positivity, and I went and saw this psychologist at the hospital, and she just said, like, I just want you to know, you don't have to like any of this. You can just hate this whole journey if you want. And I thought, oh my gosh, that feels heavy and terrible advice. So I was like, this woman doesn't know what she's talking about. Left in tears, like I was out of there. And but you know, I realized later what that conversation allowed for was just released a pressure valve. It's like, it's okay. You can just, you know.
You're allowed to be angry or upset or
you're
cry.
allowed to sit on the couch and cry all day if you want, but set a time limit on, okay, well, at the end of the day, I'm getting off though, or, you know. So you're just giving yourself those guidelines so that you can, flow through it, because otherwise it's either going to be, you know, you're forcing this kind of positivity, or you're like being dragged into the void. You've sort of just got to find that balancing point in the middle. Yeah.
And you found that journaling really helped you kind of find that balance, is that right?
It did. So once again, that beautiful friend from Amsterdam, she sent me...
She's amazing.
She is amazing. Yeah.
Shout out to the friend in Amsterdam.
Yeah. And well, I really have her to thank for writing the book in the first place, because she sent me a book called The Artist's Way. If you haven't done it, can't recommend it more highly. It's about reconnecting with your creative self, but I would just call it reconnecting with yourself. And it's 12 weeks, and I had 12 weeks of chemo, so there was some nice synergy in that. But as part of it, you do the morning pages every morning, which is like first thing when you get up, just journaling, brain dump 3 pages out. And the idea is that it's really, well, I found it really therapeutic. I didn't realize till after that journaling during traumatic or difficult times is actually an incredibly powerful tool. I just sort of stumbled across it by accident because, well, I think my friend knew, but but it helps you process, you know, and make sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it also over time just gives you clarity about, you know, so I had a lot of like thinking and dreaming time during that time.
Yeah.
What do I want to do next with my time on earth? What's, you know, because there's a lot to work through. And particularly for me, it got the most difficult when chemo finished in a way, emotionally.
Okay.
Because when you're in it, you've got like set, you know, you've got a set laundry list of what you're doing and appointments and a schedule. You're quite busy actually just getting through the doing of the cancer. And then it finishes and you feel awful and you're totally depleted and you don't have any strength, but you don't know how long it's going to take, and no one can really tell you how long it's going to be till you feel better.
Yeah.
How long is too long to take off, or should I get straight back into work? And for me, that's when I really struggled the most.
Yeah, wow.
But realising that everyone feels like that, actually, I reached out to some other women that had been through it, and they're like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, that's totally normal. And realising that was normal, then I felt fine, you know? So,
but I guess there is this, like, societal expectation or pressure that, you know, whether it's cancer or another crisis that anyone's going through, to get back on track. Get your life back to normal. But is it really ever going to be the same again?
Yeah. Like, and I wasted a lot of energy initially trying to just force myself back into that.
Yeah.
What I had been doing before. And I'm still this, you know, fun, positive, bubbly, like party girl. And I just kept exhausting myself.
Right.
And something that I loved, I was watching Michelle Obama's documentary that went with her book. Was it called Becoming?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And there was this gorgeous moment. She was sitting with a group of young girls, and one said to her, so you've just had 8 years in the White House, and now you're leaving and you're going back out into the world. How do you get your life back on track? And she said, what track? There is no track. It's just all new now. It's a new path and it's different, and it takes time to figure out what that track is and what that looks like. And that resonated with me so much because I was trying to get back on the track, not realizing that actually it was a new track now, and that was okay. That felt really scary to begin with, but to allow yourself that time and be gentle with yourself and know, okay, it's okay. It's going to take time to figure out what this next chapter looks like.
How refreshing. That is really refreshing, what Michelle Obama said. And I guess it goes back to that thing of acceptance as well, because you're now accepting that things have changed and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I guess it can happen with, you know, negative things, but also positive things. Like, you know, at the moment you're pregnant and you're going to have a baby and life is going to change.
Yes.
And it's okay that it's going to be different. So even in a positive aspect, but we've got to just...
and going in with like different expectations. You know, a girlfriend said to me the other day, she's like, my best bit of advice, she's got 4 children under like 7 or something. And she said, is just not to strive for anything during this time. Like just live in it.
Yeah.
And just get through the days, you know.
Just be.
Don't try and excel and smash everything and, you know, which A-type personalities you kind of kick into. And I thought that was great. It's like, it'll just be what it is. And just having that acceptance of it. Another thing someone said to me the other day is, you know, if you haven't slept all night and you wake up and you're exhausted, rather than fretting about, oh, the day's going to be a write-off because I haven't slept, and it's just going, okay, this is just what today is. So that's just that acceptance piece.
Yeah.
Again.
This has come up so naturally here, but being bendy, be more tree.
Yeah, be more tree.
Yeah, is a section in your book.
Yeah.
So tell us about being more tree, because I laughed when I read Be More Tree and I was like, I'm so excited to see how this...
Yeah.
And I loved it and I've written it down.
Oh,
and
gorgeous. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I loved this. This was a beautiful mentor of mine, and he was talking about the most difficult times in his life. He's like, I take inspiration, you look up at the trees, you know, which it has been one of the biggest takeaways from this whole experience for me. Is just like, we go searching for magic in life. It is all around us, and it's called nature.
Yeah.
You know, and you actually, if you stop and look and take it in, you can be completely absorbed by it. And it, you know, we know the science of it is clear. Even just looking at greenery, even if it's actually on a screen, even if it's not real, you know, it calms the nervous system. It is good for us. You know, it's what we were always meant to sort of be immersed in. But look up at the trees, and in a windy, you know, in a storm, what do? They're swaying and they're moving. They're not just rigidly standing there going, oh, stop blowing at me and stop, you know. And so the concept I took away from it was to be a bit bendy when times are challenging, when it feels like there's a gale blowing. It's just like you've just got to sway with it. You just got to go with it. Otherwise you'll snap, you know, in half. Yeah.
And I love when you said too that it reminds us that we don't bloom all year round.
Yeah.
And it's so nice because we don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that quote, the moon reminds us that you are still whole no matter what phase you're in.
Yes.
It's like we are still whole, we are still ourselves, we're still doing well, we're still moving forward if you're resting or if you're having a bad day or if you know.
Yeah.
So it's such a nice, I loved that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's something that I've just, I love like visual metaphors like that, because it's something when you are feeling a bit frazzled, you can just, you know, tune back into. But I think, it's just the best thing on any day when you're feeling a bit frazzled anyway. It's like, just find a way to get into nature, even if that is just like literally watching some ants crawling along the ground, like whatever's near you, you know. You don't need to be in a rainforest.
Yeah.
Go down to the beach or put your feet in the water, just something to sort of ground you and just remind yourself for a minute. You know, even like at night, I find, you know, going outside and looking up at the stars.
I still don't believe that stars are real. Like when I'm looking up, I'm like, how are you real? You're a pretty little twinkling thing in the sky. Like, this is incredible.
I know. It just puts it all back into kind of perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And then circling back a little bit to the journaling.
Yes.
I remember this part from your book where you said that speaking aloud your kind of worries or concerns or anger, as well as journaling it out, kind of like took the severity of that emotion away a little bit. And I agree with that. So, do you still kind of practice that?
I do. I don't journal as much as I would like,
Yeah.
but I am trying to. Actually, my word for this year, because I always just pick just a word for the year, and this year it's just write, because I find that sometimes I have to write to think. You know, it just calms me. It's like quite meditative.
Yeah.
But I think there's something also about when you put pen to paper. I don't know why, but you cannot lie. Like, it's really hard. You can sort of tell yourself all manner of things in your mind. You know, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Da-da-da. When it comes to writing it down,
Yeah.
like, I find this particularly true of relationships. I was in a pretty rocky relationship at the time, and when the pen hits the paper, the truth just kind of comes out.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, over time, the idea, because the idea as well with the morning pages is, I think in the book it guides you to sort of just write for 10 weeks and don't go back and read them, but then go back and start to...
And this is your journal.
Sorry, this was in The Artist's Way, the original
this is in The
book.
Artist's Way.
Yeah,
Oh, got
yeah.
you. Because you also, though, you have a journal version of your book.
I do
which
now,
you've just given to me, and I'm so excited. But it's so powerful to journal it out.
It is. And I think sometimes, though, people find journaling a bit intimidating, or they don't know where to start. Like, people say to me, I love the idea of it, but like the idea of opening up a blank book. And so that's why I created the journal. I was like, this is the journal I would have loved to have had at the beginning.
Yes.
That was actually just guided you through, and it guides you through the steps that are actually in the book. But, you know, giving you space to be angry and just have a rage page. You can just get it all out, you know. A brain dump page, like what are all the things coming up, you know, gratitude sections, but then just spaces for you just to write, but with something to prompt you along.
Yeah, that's so good. Because, I do get a lot of my community as well saying to me, like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And also a lot of them saying, oh, I don't want to write anything negative because then I don't want it to, like, you know, manifest. And I'm like, no, you've got to let those frustrations out. You've got to let it all go. It's like a weight lifted off your shoulders.
Well, I loved what Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, she said, their journaling's like spiritual windshield wipers. And she's like, you can whinge and moan and whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't, these are just thoughts that are passing through. It doesn't mean that this is within inside you. In fact, it's just about actually getting that dark cloud of thoughts out of your head and putting them on the page.
Yes.
Because, like we were saying, once they're out there and you've written them down, sometimes you look at it on the page and you're like, oh, why was I so worried about that?
Yes.
Or it makes them almost feel a bit trivial. You're like, oh, okay. Oh, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. We can manage that.
Which is like so powerful, because so often we'll grab a little thought and then we'll assume the worst and we'll make it bigger and bigger and bigger in our head.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we're so anxious we've made up this whole story in our mind that is completely false. But then, when you write it down, you're like, what?
Yeah. And the only caveat I would give it with journaling is that if you find you are just writing the same thing over and over and over day after day, that can actually become unhelpful and a bit unhealthy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let yourself go for a week or two or something. But if you find it's the same theme over and over and over, well, then that might be a good indication to you that maybe I need a bit of professional help here to talk this thing through with someone.
Yeah.
Because I am in a rut with this.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I had a girlfriend, same thing, and she was quite anxious in temperament, but she just said, like, I'm writing pages and pages and pages and pages on this one thing. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I would stop now.
Yeah.
Actually, and go and have a chat with someone about it, which she did. And that was, So I would say get it all out, write it all down, but just notice the themes. If you are just really obsessing on the one thing, like, okay, maybe journaling's now not helpful.
Yes. Yep. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. And you had, I'm going to read this out because you had a little quote that you said in your book that you put on your mirror, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Oh, on your board. And it was after you'd been told that you were free of cancer, but I know your journey became, quite overwhelming and hard after that. And you said you were going to get through this and you were going to come back brighter and shinier and stronger and wiser and more gorgeous than ever before. Yeah. So was this during the cancer or was this after the cancer?
So this was after, and this is when I'd moved back to Sydney. Actually, all my housemates had moved out, so I was living with new people I didn't know. All my neighbours, because I lived at 3 houses in a row, were all friends. They'd all moved out just in that year.
Oh, okay.
And it just felt like everyone had moved on with their lives, and I was like, sort of way behind where I'd started. I was exhausted. I was trying to start work a few days a week. I was just so tired and felt quite hopeless, I think. And which is just also exhaustion, right? You sort of, and not not knowing as well how long it's going to take, because no one can tell you, oh, don't worry, in 6 weeks you'll be feeling great. It's a bit, like, and that sort of then began to manifest as chronic fatigue, which lasted for about 4 years actually.
Oh, wow.
And so that in many ways was emotionally far more challenging than the cancer, because there's no end date on it. At least in cancer, you've got a treatment plan, you know when it's going to finish, right? Whereas this was like, well, you might have this for the rest of your life. Oh, goodness, that is demoralizing.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that little mantra out. I had it beside my bed, and I just read it every night and read it every morning. And I don't think I really believed it at the time, but I had to just pretend that I believed it.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, I started to feel better. I mean, I've tried so many things. That's a whole nother podcast episode over the years, recovering from chronic fatigue. But the last year and a half, I've been feeling back to my usual self. And that's like, that would be, it was 5 years since diagnosis, and I was feeling pretty rotten for a few years leading up to that. So it can happen. And that's just one other thing I'll say on the acceptance piece, because where I think sometimes the only warning on acceptance is with the chronic fatigue side of things. Like, I had accepted that this is how I was feeling and how I could always feel. But you've got to be careful in a way to not shut down the pathway to getting back to healthy, right? Because if you're then, okay, accept that I'll always feel like this, well, there's no pathway now to
then you're not going
to
be open to possibilities.
So it's that thing where you've actually just got to hold. Once again, my gorgeous GP friend, Nikki, she just said you can hold on to two truths at once.
Oh, I love
that. You might have this forever, and you might make a full recovery. Because if you're too wedded to either camp, you're continually demoralized when you don't get better.
Yes.
Or you're, oh gosh, sitting in that, I'm never going to get better. I'm always going to feel this awful. So
that is
once
such
again, the balance.
Good advice. Like, that is so good. I just feel like that is going to help so many people. And you also, I think it may have been your friend who wrote this section in the book, but it was around you don't have to be healthy to be happy as well, and that kind of mindset.
Yeah. So my best friend, the GP, this is her older sister who'd been dealing with really horrendous chronic fatigue since she was about 21.
Yeah.
So for well over 10, 15 years now. And so she was one of the first people I turned to, because I knew, of everyone I knew, whilst it wasn't cancer, I knew in terms of a health crisis, she'd had to develop some hardcore resilience and some mindsets and ways of managing.
Yeah.
And so she actually put together a few beautiful ideas in a little book and sent them to me. Oh. And then so when I was writing the book, I asked her to contribute that as a chapter, which was really lovely. Yeah. And that was a real one of those ideas that hits you and just really connects at that time. You don't have to be healthy to be happy, because the reality when you're in chronic fatigue or you're in cancer treatment, well, you don't have control over that component of your body right now. But actually that idea that you can divorce the mental and the physical was really kind of revolutionary to me. They don't have to sit at the same level. I can still contribute. I can still have beautiful conversations. I can still be a great sister. I can still leave people feeling better when they've been in my company, even though physically I'm not feeling great.
I have shivers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
It doesn't dictate it.
Yeah. And it really, I guess, it also, I think for people who aren't going through a health crisis at the moment too, it does just also put things into perspective, which is really nice. Because I know personally, sometimes I find myself in such a negative rut for no good reason. Yeah. I'm like, come on, Cleo. Yeah. This is silly, journal it out. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, really silly. Yeah. So, yeah, it really does.
And it is that thing about, focusing on the state that we are in. So often, like, we just get carried away and suddenly we're in this foul mood. And actually thinking about, what are I heard this thing recently, this amazing man called Simon Reynolds. He was like the advertising guy of like the 80s and 90s. And he's incredible, sold his like advertising agency for like $500 million. And Aussie guy.
Oh, wow.
Has just moved back to Australia from LA some years ago. But he studies like the mindsets of elite athletes and elite performers. And so he has a lot of really interesting information. But one of his things was actually how often do we focus on putting ourselves in an optimal state.
Right.
And what are And his advice was, think about the 3 conditions or the 3 words that for you put you in your best self, in your best state. And so, for me, for example, it's when I am optimistic, it's when I'm well slept, and when I can get up and journal and have that little bit of time and space in the morning. That puts me in my best state. But, I think often we don't think, well, what for me puts me in my best state in a day? And he said, actually, elite performers, they're checking in on that on an hourly basis,
Wow,
Okay. Am I in my best state right now? What could I do to change that? And
that repetition, that checking in.
Yeah. And adjusting as needs fit, rather than just like, I'm in a funk, I'm in a...
And because it can be comfortable to stay in that funk. Like, it can be so comfortable to have a whinge, have a gossip, have a, whatever, woe is me on the couch for a day or a week or a month.
Yes.
And it's like, it is easier to stay there, but it also doesn't feel very nice at all.
No. And it's ultimately not taking you forward. And it's a choice. And you can choose to, sometimes you just do need to be in that state, and you can allow yourself to do that, but recognizing that, it's probably, once again, time frame and balance.
Yeah. And so you are now living on the Gold Coast.
I am.
You are speaking at all sorts of different events and seminars and workplaces. You are pregnant, as we've mentioned.
Yes.
Like, where are you now? Where's your head at? How are you feeling?
Yeah, well, it's funny about, I think, when I think back to 2-3 years ago, just feeling exhausted, depleted, quite hopeless, to be honest, which sounds grim, but, I always tried to maintain forward momentum and positivity, but I couldn't see I'd just gone through an awful breakup, and you just think, will this ever feel better? Will this get easier? And also on that thing, of just feeling like, especially I think, for women, you've come out after a breakup particularly, and you just think, oh gosh, will I ever find someone? And then focusing on what, was really important to me, what was purposeful. And for me, it's always been about the environment and climate. But, the cancer experience really brought me back to it. How can I use my time purposefully to make impact? And that led me into work that through which I met my now partner.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I love this stuff.
It's very cute. We met on World Environment Day at a climate
fitting.
fundraiser. And I just met him. I remember just walking into him and just thinking, where have you been my whole life?
Oh,
that was just an instant, immediately.
Wow.
My heart just kind of, and when we went on our first date, like a year later, because we then ended up working together for a year.
Okay.
And he said the same on our first date. He's like, when I first met you, my heart just skipped a beat. I was like, I felt exactly the same. And so it's funny that, I think sometimes there's this, I've just got to tell you this one like Chinese proverb, because
please, I love this stuff.
Lived by this last few years, and it's of a Chinese like farmer and his son, right?
Yeah.
And they've got this horse, and it's their greatest possession, their only asset.
Yeah.
One day the horse runs away, and everyone says to them, oh my gosh, that's such bad luck. Like, that's your everything. And the dad says, oh, good luck, bad luck, who knows? And the next day the horse comes back, and it brings with it another 20 wild brumbies from up the hill, and so then the paddock is full of all these horses, and everyone says, oh my gosh, you're so lucky, that's unbelievable. He goes, oh, good luck, bad luck, who knows? And the next day the son gets on one of the horses, and one of them gets a scare from the other horses, and he falls off and he breaks his leg. And everyone says, oh my gosh, that's such bad luck. He goes, oh, good luck, bad luck, who knows? And the next day, like a war has broken out, and generals come through the village, and they take all the able-bodied men and take them off to fight in the war. And, so then the son can't go.
Yeah.
But just this idea that actually we don't know where things are unfolding often and going. And, like, so going through, this horrendous breakup that I was like, this is the worst thing. And actually it was the greatest gift of all time, because it led me to finding the most beautiful, like, man I've ever met.
My Pass Around the Smile community are going to go off on this story.
It is literally like, I wake up every day so grateful that, thank goodness I went through that.
Yes.
But at the time you can't see it necessarily.
No, and you never can.
No.
And, like, always looking back, everything makes sense. And it's so nice to feel that, like, supported, because you're like, the universe or whoever you believe in, there was a plan.
Yeah, there was a plan.
And I was supported. And it all worked out how it needed to.
It did.
And what's that quote as well? It kind of relates to your story. You never know what worse luck your bad luck saved you from.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh,
Does that sound right?
I've not heard
you
it.
never know what worse luck your bad luck saved you
Yes.
from. So say if we are in a situation and we force it or whatever, and then it might end to worse luck. But if the bad luck happens and it ends and it's really sad, but then you meet your partner or you get the money or whatever it is.
Exactly. And it's actually reminds me of a Dalai Lama quote where he says, sometimes not getting what you want is an incredible stroke of good luck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've just released a podcast on like signs and coincidences, and someone asked me like, what happens when I don't get my sign that I'm asking for? And I said like, well, I think that that's a sign in itself. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing that you're not getting that sign.
Yeah.
It could mean that there are just so many more, like you're thinking too small.
Yeah.
There are so many more opportunities for you. Like open up, let your guard down.
And knowing that abundance and like the universe is actually just full of limitless possibilities. Yes. It really is. And so I suppose to tie up that point about the good luck, bad luck, who knows, is just it's when you're in a really difficult time, and if anyone listening right now, it just feels like they're really in the thick of it right now, whatever's going on, it's like you've just got to keep scanning for the good, expecting that good things will happen, you know, and just keep programming your mind to be looking for that. Because if you are only looking for the bad, guess what? You find it, and you find it everywhere.
Yep.
But if you keep looking for the good and scanning for the good, like... It's like, you know, when you go to, they say you might be looking for a car and you want a red car, and suddenly you see red cars everywhere where you never saw them before. It's the exact same thing. If you're scanning for the good, you see it and you do find it. It's literally,
it's like it's the law of attraction working. Yeah. And what I love about the law of attraction is that there's so much science that backs looking for good and finding good and looking for bad and finding bad.
Yeah.
Like there's so much science that backs it.
Yeah, totally.
And on those days where we are losing hope and we're thinking, oh, I can't, you know, think positive and create my positive reality because you're feeling crap. Well, science actually says you can.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, you look at placebo effect.
Yes.
You look at, and just one like other thing I'd love to just share with your listeners is, because this changed my life last year. I did this 3-day course. It was called the Lightning Process, and it was all about neural pathways, basically. And it was to help with my chronic fatigue. Yeah. And I kid you not, in 3 days, the chronic fatigue just up and left my body. No. It was insane. And it was all of that. It was scanning for the good. And so literally in terms of your symptoms and how you're feeling, I wasn't allowed to come in and be like, oh, my neck's hurting, I've got brain fog. It was like, okay, what's gone really well in the last 24 hours? And just programming you just to be thinking about what went well.
Yes.
Because when you've been sick for a long time as well, or you've been really anxious for a long time, or, you know, it feels like it's part of you and it's in you.
Yes, it's attached to you.
Yeah, and it's part of your identity.
Yeah.
And you fixate on that. Well, if you're fixating on just, oh my God, my neck's hurting, you're just firing up all the pathways that are just thinking about that. Yeah. You're not thinking about, oh, actually for 80% of yesterday, my neck didn't hurt and I felt great. So anyway, if anyone's dealing with like a chronic issue or like, you know, even just stress, worry, overwhelm, anxiety, the Lightning Process, it is
the Lightning
amazing.
Process. Okay, great. We can put a link to in the show notes as well. And I love that too. And you can bring it down to quite a simple way of doing it too. And I think you chat about this in your book, where instead of I have to exercise, I get to exercise, or I have to go to work. I get to go to work.
Yes.
Like, start changing your vocabulary.
Words are just so powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it was another thing they taught me in the Lightning Process was just changing the language of I'm stressed to I'm doing stress.
Oh,
or
okay.
I'm anxious. Because, you know, I hear young women saying it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm
it's
highly
very
anxious.
Loosely
I'm very
used now.
anxious.
Yeah.
I'm an anxious person. That makes it in you. That's something you can't change. Yeah. But it's not in you. It's a state that you're feeling right now. So what I love about, and it sounds a bit weird at first, getting used to it, but I'm doing anxiety, is it's like a choice now. I'm opting in. I'm actually choosing to do anxiety. And for me, it was really helpful with like, oh, I'm exhausted, because that's in me, right? I was like, oh, I'm doing exhaustion.
Doing exhaustion just for a little bit.
I'm just doing a bit of fatigue.
It'll pass through.
Yeah.
Doing a little dabbling in fatigue
I'm doing
today.
a bit of brain fog. And it is like, it's just wild how much it just takes it out of you, and it suddenly just puts it over here, away from you, and it's like, okay, that's actually
it's like separate.
A passing thing. Yeah. It's not in me, and I don't want to opt into that.
Not your problem anymore.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah. Yeah, it was life-changing.
Oh,
yeah.
I know that you're a speaker always, like, this is your job. But, like, yeah, like, of course you are. I can just listen to you talk. Like, I just want to stay here and listen to
that's
you
so
talk all
lovely.
day.
That's so lovely.
Oh, no, you're amazing. You're so inspiring and insightful and educating. I think that is the difference with you, is you educate in this really light and gentle way.
Oh, that's so
inspiring.
That's
it really
so beautiful.
is. So
well, it's so nice for me, I think, to, you know, turn something that's been really difficult into something that's helpful for other people. Like, it's just the ultimate, you know, I get the most beautiful messages from people all around the world that are just going through the most difficult things, be it, you know, having lost someone, like lost, you know, a partner, dealing with immense grief, and just to hear them say, this idea is really helping me today. It's just the greatest feeling.
How fulfilling.
So yeah, it works both ways. It's, yeah.
So tell my listeners where they can find you and your book and everything.
Yeah, so I spend way too much time on the gram, on the Instagram. So it's Briony Benjamin, Briony Benjamin. Otherwise, yeah, my book is available anywhere you can get books, really.
Yeah,
online,
I think I got it at Big W. Did I get it?
Yeah, Big W.
Yeah.
Kmart, Target, I think they've all got it. So,
How good.
yeah.
How good. And I'll put all those links in the show notes as well.
Amazing.
But thank you so much. It's been such a fun conversation.
It's been so fun. I feel like we could chat for hours.
Me
but
too.
I feel like we've known each other for a really long time.
know,
So it's really nice. So thank you for your, just gorgeous warmth and energy, and such a beautiful interviewer. Like,
oh
so
my
seamless.
God. Thank you. I was so nervous for today.
What?
I knew that as soon as you walked in, I would be fine, because I knew that you're such a lovely, beautiful person. But I don't know. I'm just still, working through limiting beliefs, self-doubt, all of that.
Or being
stuff.
a woman sometimes, isn't it? I was just say, channel you average, mediocre white guy, you know?
Literally, I need to do that more.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Briony.
Thanks for having me.